Here's something that'll bother you. The most honest book ever written about how people actually behave was composed by a man whose shoulders had been ripped out of their sockets. His name was Niccolo Machiavelli. You've heard Machiavellian. You think it means evil, cunning, manipulative. You're wrong. What Machiavelli actually discovered will ruin every fairy tale you've been told about loyalty, hard work, and justice. By the time you finish watching this, you'll understand why people betray you, why good guys finish last, and why your parents' advice might be the most dangerous thing you ever believed. Let me take you back to December 10th, 1513. The man who lost everything. 14 months earlier, Machiavelli was the secretary of the Florentine Republic. He negotiated with kings. He commanded armies. He sat across from the most dangerous men in Italy. Then the Medici family returned to power. They arrested him, accused him of conspiracy. There was no evidence because there was no conspiracy, but they tortured him anyway. The strappado. They tied his hands behind his back, suspended his body in the air, and dropped him. His shoulders dislocated. He didn't confess because there was nothing to confess. They released him, stripped his title, took his money, banished him to a crumbling farm 10 kilometers south of Florence. No power, no status, no future, just olive trees and the sound of his own breathing. Most men would have died there, not physically. The slow death, wine by noon, bitterness by dinner, the quiet rot of a man who gave up. Machiavelli didn't give up. He wrote a letter to his friend, Francesco Vittori. In it, he described his daily routine. Morning, arguing with firewood merchants over pennies. Afternoon, gambling with the butcher and the miller. Loud, vulgar, beneath him. But then, evening. On the coming of evening, I return to my house and enter my study. At the door, I take off the day's clothing covered with mud and dust and put on garments regal and courtly, and reclothed appropriately. I enter the ancient courts of ancient men. Read that again. A man covered in dirt, humiliated, forgotten. But the moment he entered that room, he refused to be small. He dressed for the encounter. He treated dead thinkers as his most important conversation partners. And in that room, stripped of everything, he wrote The Prince. Why does this matter to you? Because Machiavelli didn't theorize about hardship from a palace. He wrote the manual for reality while reality was actively trying to destroy him. And his first lesson will bother you. Life does not reward goodness. Most people grow up inside a story where loyalty gets returned, where effort gets recognized, where the universe has a hidden sense of justice, and good people eventually win. Machiavelli watched that story burn in 1494. The French king invaded Italy with 30,000 men. The Medici, who had ruled Florence for 60 years, crumbled overnight. Piero de' Medici handed over Florentine fortresses to the enemy without a fight, desperate to save his own skin. The citizens who had praised the Medici for decades turned on them in hours. The palace was looted, the family was exiled, no one remembered the art they funded, no one remembered the festivals. Decades of loyalty evaporated like morning fog. Machiavelli was 25 years old when he watched this happen. He never forgot it. Here's the first principle. Life does not reward goodness, it rewards accuracy. Accuracy of perception. The ability to see people, systems, and yourself without the comforting distortion of what you wish were true. Most people never achieve this. They live inside a fairy tale, and fairy tales are excellent raw material for someone else's ambition. The engine behind every human. In his discourses on Livy, Machiavelli wrote something that sounds like pure cynicism. He said all men are evil, and they'll only act correctly when forced. Most people flinch at that. It sounds extreme. Hateful. It's not. It's engineering. Think about gravity. Gravity isn't mean. It doesn't hate the man who falls off a cliff. It just operates. It's a force. If you understand it, you can build skyscrapers. If you deny it, the ground doesn't soften for you. Human self-interest is the psychological equivalent of gravity. It's not a flaw. It's the engine. When Machiavelli said men are evil, he meant every human being, under enough pressure, will prioritize their survival, their comfort, their status over yours. Not because they're villains, because that's how they're wired. And the exceptions you cling to, the friend who would never betray you, the partner who would never leave, Machiavelli would say, you haven't applied enough pressure to test that hypothesis yet. This isn't bitterness, it's freedom. Because once you accept this, you stop being shocked by betrayal. You stop being wounded by the predictable. You stop blaming individuals for acting exactly how their nature dictates. And you start building your life on ground that can actually hold weight, not on the quicksand of other people's promises. The two forces that control you. Here's where Machiavelli destroys every motivational speech you've ever heard. He didn't believe you could be anything you wanted. He didn't believe in unlimited potential. He believed life is a war between two forces, and your fate depends on which one you feed. First force, virtu, not virtue. That's a bad translation. Virtu is effective force. The combination of skill, cunning, decisiveness, energy, courage, and strategic intelligence that lets you impose your will on circumstances, the muscle that pushes back against chaos. Second force, fortuna. Not fortune like lottery winnings. Fortuna is the blind, indifferent, destructive flood of events no human controls. Disease, economic collapse, the betrayal you didn't see coming, the opportunity that arrives 10 years too late. Machiavelli compared fortuna to a flooding river. Violent, unpredictable, capable of destroying everything. Here's the part that should keep you awake. He argued that fortuna governs roughly half of your life. Half. That means half of what happens to you is completely outside your control. No amount of discipline, planning, or brilliance will change it, but the other half belongs to virtu, and that half is where everything gets decided. Most people waste their virtu on things that don't matter. Arguments online, dead relationships, careers they chose to please someone else, habits that fill time but build nothing. Then when fortuna strikes, when the flood comes, they have nothing left. No embankments, no reserves, no structure. They stand in the open and beg the river to be kind. The river is never kind. The man who built himself. Francesco Sforza knew what that meant. Born into a mercenary family in 1401, no wealth, no title, no noble blood. What he had was virtu, raw, relentless strategic force. Over decades of warfare, political maneuvering, and ruthless alliance building, he made himself Duke of Milan, not through inheritance, through action, applied at the exact moment fortuna opened a door. He watched, he waited, and when the gap appeared, he moved with a violence that left no room for reversal. His success lasted because he earned it. People who inherit power, who get handed their position by circumstance, Machiavelli watched that pattern repeat across centuries. Power that's given always gets taken back. Power that's built endures. What does that mean for you? Stop praying for better circumstances. Start building the internal architecture that makes you dangerous regardless of circumstances. Your job isn't to control the storm. Your job is to become someone who walks through storms and comes out sharper on the other side. The cycle that eats everyone. In Book 1 of the Discourses, Machiavelli describes something you'll recognize in your own life. Every system of power follows a cycle. Strength creates order. Order creates prosperity. Prosperity creates comfort. Comfort creates weakness. Weakness creates collapse. And from the rubble, it starts again. The engine is human nature. The same hunger that builds an empire eventually corrodes it. The same ambition that propels the founder devours his grandchildren. Rome didn't fall because of barbarians. Rome fell because Romans stopped being Roman. Luxury replaced austerity. Entertainment replaced discipline. By the time external threats arrived, the internal rot had already done the work. Now look at yourself. You fight for something. You build something. You achieve stability. And then, slowly, without noticing, the comfort of that stability starts dissolving the discipline that created it. You stop training, stop learning, stop questioning. You coast. And the moment you coast, the river rises. Machiavelli's solution is brutal. Conflict is necessary for health. Though friction keeps you alive, the tension prevents the rot. The struggle you're trying to escape is the very thing keeping you sharp. The discomfort you resent is your immune system. The argument you avoid is the conversation that could save the relationship. Comfort isn't the reward. Comfort is anesthesia, and anesthesia is what they give you before the surgery you didn't consent to. The final Machiavellian lesson. Here's what Machiavelli actually believed. You were born into a world that doesn't care about you, not in a hostile way, in an indifferent way. The river doesn't hate the house it floods, it just moves. You were surrounded by people who will love you when it's convenient and abandon you when it's not. not because they're evil, because self-interest is the gravity of human psychology, and gravity doesn't take days off. Half of what happens to you will be decided by forces you can't see, predict, or control. And the response, the Machiavellian response, isn't despair, it's precision. Build your virtue. Not the fake discipline of alarm clocks and protein shakes, the real kind. The ability to see the world as it is and move through it without flinching. The ability to lose everything and still have the internal architecture to rebuild. The ability to read people not as you wish they were, but as their actions prove them to be. Prepare for fortuna. Build the embankments before the flood. Develop skills no one can take from you. Save when there's no crisis. So when the crisis comes, you're not begging. And above all, act. Because Machiavelli's deepest contempt wasn't for the wicked, it was for the passive. The man who watches the world burn from his window and says, "What can I do?" The man who has arms, legs, a mind, and time, and wastes all four waiting for permission. In that farmhouse covered in mud and debt and the memory of dislocated shoulders, a man sat down every evening, dressed himself in the only dignity he had left, and built something that would outlast every person who tried to destroy him. He didn't wait for the world to invite him back. He created something the world couldn't ignore. 500 years later, his enemies are dust, and you're still here, feeling something shift. That shift is virtue waking up. Don't let it go back to sleep. Thank you for watching. If you want to step into the shadows with me, join my Patreon. YouTube's suppressing this kind of content, but over there, we go deeper, uncut, and uncensored. I'll see you soon.